Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Now, as you can see, I have Chattervast with me today. Now, if you don't know who he is, he's a fellow YouTuber. He posts videos on political topics and just other fun content, so you can go check him out in the description and pinned in the comments. Now, so today we're going to be just kind of covering Biden and Harris's plan for the future, if you could call it that. I don't know how much of a plan it is. It seems to be more of a plan to ruin the future, but
it's a little scary.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Now, let's see. So, which part of their plan do you want to talk about first? Because we've got a few parts.
Well, I think it's probably important, like in your document, it started with the American healthcare stuff. And I know that's super concerning to a lot of people because, you know, medical costs, stuff like that, anger about Obamacare. I think that's a good place to start.
Oh, yeah, and I agree. And that's the one thing I'm concerned about, right, is when I was looking at their healthcare plan, they claim to do two, I would say, major things. They're going to reduce healthcare costs, and at the same time, they're going to basically provide more government-instituted healthcare, which, at least from my viewpoint, that's very concerning, because I don't see how they're going to do both of those things and still keep the economy at a functioning level. It's not intuitive for how the economy has worked in the past or how it ever really has worked. But what do you think on that?
Yeah, definitely. Like, so they're basically giving you, if you ever, so when I go looking for restaurants, this is one thing. I'm always looking for the trifecta for a restaurant. It's fast, it's cheap, and it's good. And that's like impossible in business to achieve all of those results. When you go looking to buy something in a marketplace, you're looking for fast. To get it fast, you want it cheap, and you want it to be a good product. And you know that's not possible. And what they're promising here is something similar to that, something that's easy for everybody to get fast. They want it inexpensive. And I don't know that they actually even said that they would make it good. I think they mostly said that they would make it less complex to navigate. I was like, well, maybe they'll make it fast and cheap. They won't make it good, but
oh, exactly. And that's the thing, right? Because if we look at I would say, how the market tends to work on government-provided services, right? We can determine the fact that essentially, if there's not as much competition, it's going to work worse. Now, even if there is competition, though, it's a very weird concept, even for the government, I would say, to provide this healthcare just basically as a service, because of the fact that when the government provides something, no one can tell them what to do except for the government. They are the highest chain in the hierarchy. They are essentially the boss, and they're being their own boss, and that doesn't work out too well.
No, when the person making the regulations is also providing the product or service, you're going to, run into a few issues there, especially for competitors. I mean, you're not really going to have competition when they have a leg up in the whole thing. They're taking other people's money to make it. And I mean, who can compete with that in business if you don't have to pay for it yourself and you don't provide the regulations for it?
That's the scary part, is I think with their plan, and this is just a plan as a whole, but this part even specifically as well, we're just going to see we're going to see the economy having a harder time. Of course, we've been seeing this for a long time, but I think their plan is just going to do nothing but add to that problem.
Yeah, exactly. And like even now, healthcare costs we use one of the marketplace plans because was cheaper in some degree, but then I still like it backed with taxes. When tax season comes around, it's like, oh, it really wasn't that great of a deal. And a lot of people said, like Obama said that you would have more options, you'd get to keep the plan that you liked, and a lot of those promises never really came true. And now it's just more of a mess. You added more regulation, you added more costs, and you added more taxes needed, and now you have a mess right now, obviously. I don't think they're going to make it any better, though.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And one thing I've noticed, when people create these, I would say, these plans for how the government is going to magically fix something, is they always start under the assumption, right? Because the free market, so it exists, and in general, most Americans think that should be the basis, I would say, for our government. They just think they need to add control to it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But one thing I've noticed is it's a weird, I would say, mentality, and it's where they believe the free market works, but then for some reason there are magical moments where they think it would be better for the government to, I would say, intervene in it. And that's, to me, and obviously I could be missing some key component of their argument, but to me that seems illogical to assume that it's just going to stop working when you want it to.
Yeah, like, I mean, I understand the fear, I think, is that when you're dealing with, especially things in pharmaceuticals, we have vaccines and stuff like that, there's regulations that are needed there to some degree because you need people to be safe. Just like I used to be a real estate agent, and in real estate, you're dealing with a lot of government regulation about inspections and how you build stuff. And the idea is that you protect people. You protect the home buyer. You protect people making sure they do things right and stuff. And I understand that. But it almost takes another form over time that they want to control everything and have everything. It goes away from their initial point of like protecting people, but also even the idea of just protecting people and not making them. I have this concept that like we're infantilism, we're making people stay in the stage of being a child longer by not giving them the responsibility to understand and make decisions for themselves. And by over-regulating stuff, we're making it so, oh, this is just a safe space, and we've gotten rid of all the players that can hurt you and all this stuff. And it's like, no, you need to do your own due diligence. You need to look into things. You need to understand what you're doing. Everybody's going into stocks and buying stocks and different things like that. It's like, well, you're going to get messed up unless you know what you're doing. And they're trying to provide all these protections now in healthcare, in medical things, and in home buying, all the venues right now, and you really need people to have some of their own responsibility for themselves. I feel like the government and generally the left agenda is to strip away personal responsibility and accountability and make it so that you're not responsible for what happens, you are the victim, and that the society is responsible for taking care of you or each other. And I don't feel like that works long term, like, because you have to be able to understand why you're doing and what you're doing, or else you're going to end up somewhere and you're not going to know where you are.
That's a really, really good point to me, because that's one of the, I would say, the key components of, like, and I'm sure you know that I'm more libertarian leaning, but that's one of the key components of that is essentially individualism, taking responsibility for yourself, right? But the pandemic we have currently, and I'm not talking about COVID, I'm talking about people. But the pandemic we have currently that is spreading through, I would say, our values, is the idea that we need government to swoop in and save us from every little problem we're having. And it's not healthy to create a society, because then you're going to need government to fix everything. And because government is naturally bad at fixing things, it just turns into a mess.
Yeah, I mean, like, you see it right now. So I'm talking with people constantly about the problem in our society is that we are the weak people. So you have a cyclical thing that happens is there's bad times, and then strong men are made in those bad times, and those strong men then go create good times, and the good times create weak men, which inevitably create bad times again. And we're the weak men nowadays because our reliance on others and society and government, and if something, everybody loves to talk about apocalyptic scenarios, but the moment that your electricity stops working, you have a kid and you don't have diapers at the store, your life is just a mess. You don't have electricity, and like, that's fun to talk about camping in the woods and shooting zombies, but suddenly your wife or girlfriend's curling iron isn't working and you don't have hot water to take a nice bath and you don't have potable water. Suddenly you're like, oh wow, I'm really in a bind here. And I think our society is at that point. So they're continuing to rely on a government and other people to take care of them and provide for their welfare. But at the end of it, you're not learning how to be responsible and train your own kids or those around you to lead up another generation and then the next part of the legacy. We just don't really talk about that a lot in America as a legacy. And so we're just providing for ourselves and trying to take what we want nowadays. So it's all backwards.
Yeah, that's I agree 100% on that. Now, let's see. We do probably need to move on to our second point.
The create jobs, I don't really know that there's a lot to say there, except for that everything we've just said, like the government. My dad always told me the government doesn't have a job. They take money from you to employ other people. They don't make money. And that's obviously like a huge problem. I personally wouldn't have too much of a problem if the government had arms of it. And technically it does to some degree, like the U.S. Post Office and Amtrak and things like that. Technically like the boundaries between private and public are a little bit gray there.
Yeah.
So if the government could actually like make money outside of taxes and wasn't directly competing in the free market and making it hard and regulating and competing in the free market, maybe we could come up with some things. But the create jobs things, I think almost every president has said that, and I don't know where they even get the numbers about how many jobs did they create, and they just like say hundreds of thousands or millions of jobs. I don't know where they get those numbers, but
oh, exactly. And I think one thing that I've always found interesting about the create jobs part for any president really is the fact that for some reason they come up with an idea, and at least from my viewpoint, it's a flawed idea, of being able to manufacture the economy. Because, I mean, that the government traditionally isn't capable of creating jobs. So it's just a weird concept to even add on your, I would say, your platform, is the idea that you're going to create jobs for people when you cannot control the economy. And the more you try to control it, obviously, the more it fails. So
Yep. And which we saw that this summer, the idea, which like if you're Republican leaning and you're about fiscal conservative, whatever that word is, like being fiscally conservative, you learn that this summer that your own party doesn't even abide by that idea because you've added trillions of dollars to the debt. Not that like you don't need to compromise to some degree, but if you walk down that road of adding more and more to the debt and you rely on propping up the economy, eventually it's going to come down. And that's kind of what a lot of people in real estate and in the markets are talking about, that this is kind of a sham economy. And at some point it's going to come down. We just don't know how hard and how soon it's going to be. You can't just pump money into it and just like hope for the best. Especially
when that money itself is manufactured. I mean, at this point, they're not even they're just, debasing our currencies. They're creating inflation, and then they expect somehow the economy is going to survive because of that.
I don't know. I don't know who's making all these rules and coming up with these ideas, but I don't feel like they understand what it's like to be outside of their space, like their think tank.
Exactly, yeah. Now, let's see. So, next point, let's take a look at this one real quick. So, mask mandate. What are you thinking about that?
Oh, well, I don't know. Like, you're in Colorado, so yes. That to me, like, I'm in the Southeast. I'm in South Carolina, and to us, like, anything west of Texas is basically super liberal, and they're like, in the media, they present like California and all the West Coast as crazy. There's Antifa, there's mask mandates everywhere. Here, I don't think that if the federal government came down and said you have to wear a mask, you would definitely see lawsuits on our state levels against that.
Nice.
Because I mean, Georgia next door to us said like you can't even mandate it. So I don't know what they're going to do as far as like trying to mandate it, or as Biden says, he's going to ask in a friendly way all the Americans to wear it. There's too much to say that there's possibly it helps, but there's also stuff that says it doesn't help. And I mean, with the vaccine here nowadays, like, isn't the idea that, oh, you vaccinate enough people and then they don't even have to wear masks? But then again, they're still asking people to wear masks. It's just like a convoluted argument of it seemingly that they want to control people, but for what end? I'm still unsure.
Oh, exactly. Now, and that's the one thing is I was looking at Biden's whole mask idea, and what he was saying is this was just what he was saying. I honestly don't know how much weight this holds. But he was saying, essentially, that he was going to, contact and work with all the governors. And then if they refuse to mandate masks, he would contact and work with all the mayors. So I think the position we're going to be seeing is that pretty much any more leftist-leaning county or state is going to go for mask mandates.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, because even in our town, outside of Greenville, and there they did create fines and mandates and stuff, and I think there was some initial response of fear, and that people did comply initially, but at this point, there's tons of stores. I mean, Walmart backtracked, and Home Depot, and they have, like, door checkers, like, who count, and they have, like, signs here, but I still go in those stores, and in general, I wear a mask, but, like, in general, like, I go in the stores, and there's just tons of people who don't even care here that... But I don't know what it's like out, like, especially in Colorado. I know that's not the West Coast, but even where you're at might be completely different than what it's going to be like in California, whether or not there's compliance in general.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And that's the thing is, I think even... I mean, we've seen this, I would say, a lot of time with the... I don't know how to refer to them, but the more prominent liberal figures, or leftist figures, I should call them, is... they don't abide by their own mask mandates.
Yeah.
So even among, I would say, leftists, we're not going to see I've lost the word for it, but basically they're not going to just accept that mandate necessarily. They might say they do, they might promote it, but it's really not an easy mandate to accept, because it's more of an abstract, like, preventative means, and there's just really nothing tangible to the fact that, like they say, wear a mask, right? But, I mean, we could make an argument that no one should be able to drive because it's an increased danger of dying. And that just, it doesn't, to me, make any logical sense why we should prevent something if there's no active harm being done.
Exactly. And, like, with the leaders, like you mentioned, they're shooting themselves in the foot. They really should be abiding by their own rules if they're going to make them, regardless of whatever reasons they had to do what they did. They should be doing what they're trying to enforce. And then I think we could have a better argument that if they felt like it was the right thing to do and that it actually does good, and they are doing it themselves, yeah, then we could have a different conversation. But they're not even doing it in general. And like you said, it's convoluted, and the science does not... It's very inconclusive. Like, I know if you put up stuff on YouTube and they're going to say, like, this actually does whatever, there's too much research and too many varying things that Dr. Fauci, the WHO, the CDC, and other scientists have said across the board. There's too much variance there to, like, conclusively say 6 feet matters, masks matter, vaccines will actually do it. We don't know the long-term health risks of getting the virus, first off, and what the long-term health risks of having the vaccine or other things that we're trying to do to prevent it. It's like it picks and chooses almost to some degree who its victims are.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, there's quite a few things here regarding the college tuition stuff that they want to... I think I wrote this down, and you have it here as well, okay. That they want to... forgive student debt.
Yeah.
And that's a big bucket of molten lava to pour on your own self. Like, that is a mess to get into. And as nice as it is to not be in debt, and everybody should, like, you shouldn't have gotten there in the first place if you, like, there isn't any reason, because I know, and I've seen the people comment and say things that they went into college fully expecting that the government would pay off their loan and that it would be forgiven. And the implications of doing that are huge, because you have people who put down money expecting a return on that, or that would be paid off. And suddenly, if you just wipe out those things, say that those aren't given back, you have problems for the people who are lending the money. And I mean, it's easy to say, like, they're rich people and they have plenty of money, but at the same time, you're breaking their trust, and you obviously are, like, not giving them money, and you have problems with the economy going forward with that trust. Then they're not going to invest in other assets in our economy. You're gonna see fallout from that.
Oh, exactly. And also, I mean, the fact that, and we would obviously have to look at, I would say, the more statistical, I would say, side of this, but I'm not even entirely convinced that basically all the student debts currently have money backing them up. Like, that amount of money, and trying to, I would say, just cancel those debts is essentially creating a gigantic hole in the economy. And we're going to be seeing if he actually does that, which it seems like he's gonna try. We're going to be seeing some serious, I would say, backlash from that, and some serious side effects.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And I would say this, like, if anybody's watching and hasn't gone to college and they're younger, I would advocate that you do some research and find out whether or not you even should go to college. Not that college doesn't help you, but there are other things. There are other venues. And when you get to adulthood and, like, realizing, like, making money doesn't require you to have a degree. I know plenty of people, and myself included, like, I'm in a field of work that would not have required me to go to college. And I learned things in college, but they were more social skills, and that was great. But I think you can learn some of those social skills outside of college. But this is all to say, just like, there are other options, and you don't have to follow the trope that says, hey, you're born, you go through school, you stay for college, you have debt, and you get a job, and you try to pay it off, and then you save and you retire at 65. You don't have to follow that method. There are plenty of other options out there.
And even if someone does go to college, right? I know of a guy, and I might put this up on screen, but so he's figured out essentially how you can go to super cheap accredited colleges for $11 a day or less. So basically, a lot of times people have attached this, I would say, this idea of the fact that you need to go to the most expensive college you can, like, Harvard, MIT, stuff like that, just for the name. But unless you're going to one of the top schools in like the entire world, nowadays, because so many people have college degrees, there's nothing attached to the idea of just college basically as a whole. Yeah. If you have a degree, no one cares where you got it, essentially. Now, obviously, like I said, that can change a bit for very very well-known colleges, and if you're like one of the top students there. But if not, then your goal should be to get your degree as cheaply as possible, so you don't build up debt, and you can take responsibility for your own, basically, your own finances.
Yeah, the old adage still rings true that it's not who you know, or not what you know, but who you know half the time. And most employers will say that what makes a good employee is somebody who just shows up on time and does the job. And if you can be like, if you show up on time, you're better. I can't remember the statistics. I read the statistics on this. If you show up on time, you're better than like 60 something % of the average workers. And that's such an easy thing to hit consistently, just being there on time, just showing up. And it's like, man, if that's what makes a good worker, we're in a very bad place in America.
So
it's like, you can be a good worker and you just find connections, meet some people, go out, and you can find other ways to get a good job and provide and do all the other stuff that you want to do.
Oh, yeah, well, I agree 100%. And that's one interesting thing about like college is it's been traditionally used. It's not used as much as a filtering tool for, I would say, for basically education, as a filtering tool for conforming as much. And that might sound a little weird, obviously, but it's essentially basically a way to, it helps, I would say, businesses traditionally, and this is why they like college degrees and why a lot of them only accept people with college degrees, is because it pretty much guarantees that someone had to spend all that time working to get the degree, right? So it's kind of like a filtering method for if you work hard or not. But because so many people can get degrees now, and pretty much everyone has a degree at this point, it's become a lot less valuable. So instead, people need to basically show that they have a unique quality or they are really good at working. And if they can do that, that's pretty much an alternative.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going to find that like there are a lot of people I even know who went to school for some high tech or advanced thing, a business related thing, and aren't or won't be making the initial amount of money that they thought they would be making, compared to especially like somebody who goes into a tech field. I mean, not tech, but like what is it? Tech school, tech trade. Somebody who goes and like is an auto mechanic or like construction or landscaping. It's surprising the amount of money that you will see poured into those fields and for those workers. If you can do those jobs well, you're going to be really well off. I mean, I talked to a plumber and man, a plumber, everybody likes to like make all the jokes about plumbers and stuff like that, but when you see how much money a plumber makes, I just paid one to work on our house, and the amount of money I was handing over to them is like, it's no laughing matter. All the jokes are just kind of rescinded at that point.
Yeah, and those, I can't think of the name either. It's right on the tip of my tongue, but basically, those trades and stuff, they are extremely valuable, and people underestimate them a lot. People are like, it's the traditional idea of, oh, I must go to college, I must get a decently well-paying job, and then I must work till I retire for the purpose of retiring. Meanwhile, you've got all these, like you said, plumbers and people who probably started their own business, and they are like just raking in bank, quite frankly, because I mean, people have stopped valuing that trade quite as much as they should. So the people who actually remain in that trade are still, making an extremely large profit.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Especially with the economic boom based around housing and building houses. And I mean, you saw this stimulus check. I live in an area where a lot of people, I think, use their stimulus checks to add onto their house or build something. And regarding that, I mean, the housing market's already booming, and it's so hard to get a contractor to be able to come because they're so busy with work. And if you're looking at an industry like that, like obviously if the housing market falls out, you're going to lose some jobs and not have as many contractors needed. But it's still, people need houses and things need to be fixed. Cars, housing, landscape, anything related to those. You're going to have employment inevitably for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Now let's see. Next topic. Which one should we talk about? We've got, let's see, got some extra points here, or we can do another one of the topics you sent.
I had mentioned just the tax cuts, and we can mention this briefly, but Trump had introduced tax cuts, and these actually cut. Everybody likes to talk about the rich getting tax cuts, but realistically, they cut taxes across the board for everyone. And it's important to note that Biden says, on one hand, that he's not going to raise the taxes or try to tax the average people and the poor less. But on the other hand, he's going to be repealing the Trump tax cuts. And if you do that, you're going to be raising the taxes for everyone. I think several other people on YouTube that if you look at them, I think Andre Cheek and Graham Stephan, Meet Kevin especially, he mentioned this, that inevitably, in Minority Mindset, that your taxes are going to go up when they do this. It doesn't matter who you are. So...
Oh, exactly. And that's the concept people, I would say a lot of people don't understand about the economy. It's like we've seen this in California, okay? So they pass a bill that I forget what it was. It raised the minimum wage for freelance workers or something. It was something like that. It was something to do with freelance workers. So they passed that bill. And then a bunch of freelance workers got laid off, and everyone's wondering, why did that happen? Well, could it possibly be that the businesses cannot afford these higher tax rates and still pay their employees as much? And that's going to be the problem we're going to see, is everyone wants to obviously demonize businesses, but isn't it he's raising substantially anyone over 400,000, right?
Yes. It'll go Trump, so it'll go from 36 or 34% to 39.4%.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, everyone, as I was saying, everyone wants to demonize big businesses, but the thing they forget is, if we're looking at like the actual business itself, 400,000 and above should not at all be considered a big business. That's a lot of small town businesses fit into that category. Like big businesses, you're looking at multi-billion-dollar businesses right there, which personally, for other reasons I could get into, I don't think they should have taxes raised either. But the idea that you're going to be raising taxes for businesses which like barely even scrape the barrel as to being a slightly big business, like that's just going to really ruin small town economies as well, because the bigger businesses in the smaller towns aren't going to be able to make as much of a profit, and therefore they're not going to be able to hire as many people.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think a lot of people understand how much it costs to run a business. I mean, you look at a laundromat, for example, and you go in there, you use the machines, and you think, oh, how hard could this be to put in a couple of machines? But say that your machines are going out, or you need to go buy new machines, you're looking at $100,000 to $150,000 for a small laundromat in equipment just to put machines in. And I don't even know that includes labor and stuff, but it's like that's. I mean, compared to like whatever $400,000 of profit that you need to be taxed on and stuff, when you're looking at your equipment could cost a quarter or more of that alone, you're going to see that small business it's a lot more money than you'd think to just run the thing. So it's not going to help people.
Yeah, and there's a reason, because I mean, here's the deal. A lot of people can start a small business, and I know that sounds. Yeah. It sounds. Some people could view that as sounding arrogant, but it's more for me. It's more of a faith in people's, I would say, ability. Is that yeah. I think that people can create a successful business for themselves if they want, and one of the reasons though people don't do that is it's actually so much easier to go and work for, I would say, like a consistent job for another business than actually having to manage your own business. Because like the amount of taxes you got to do, the amount of invoicing, the amount of advertising, the amount of pretty much everything you have to manage if you're starting your own small business, it's obscene.
Yeah, exactly. I think people are, you have like the two types of people, the people who are willing to take risks and the people who want stability. And that's fine. But at the same time, you see a lot of people who want stability calling to tax the rich and stuff like that. It doesn't make any sense when the majority of those people, your business owners and things, are taking on the risk. You go, and I think Ben Shapiro and a lot of the other people, all the talking heads talk about this all the time, that everybody wants to go tax these people. But it's like, at the end of the day, they should take the majority of the profit because they are taking the risk. You may lose your job when this business goes out, but they are in the debt and they owe that debt and they are taking the risk. You being employed, yeah, it stinks if you lose your job, but you can go get a new one. They have to find a way to pay off debt and take over or handle whatever the business affairs are. And it's likely that if you run a business, you are not just working 40 hours a week or whatever it is that you're for the people that you're employing. You're working way more than that running any kind of business. So. Oh,
exactly. And especially when you start out, it's because, like, you know, if you read business books at all, a lot of, like, I'm trying to find the book right now, but let me look at my shelf. It's, okay, it's one of the books I have in the background on my video, but, because they were talking about the fact that, essentially, if you're starting a small business, you need to be prepared to be working overtime, nights, weekends, pretty much 24/7 for a year or two before it starts turning enough of a profit, right? Mm-hmm. Like you, it's not going to be an easy just, oh, I put in some money, oh, I started a business, now I'm all successful. That's not how businesses work. Otherwise, everyone would start one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not so easy.
Oh, exactly, yeah. Okay, so I think that is going to do it for this video. Now, remember, okay, so I have done this video with Chattervast. We actually made a video on his channel as well. I put links to this throughout this video, but if you haven't checked it out yet, go click on the link pinned in the description, in the description or pinned in the comments, and check out his channel. Now, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
See y'all.